Okay, good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Today we are on the cardiovascular system, and hopefully we'll be able to cover a good amount of respiration as well. I think that must be Kumo Kekai, that book, if that's not one of yours.
Not ours.
Okay, all good. Get myself arranged over here. Make sure you can see me. Okay. Let's.
Outfits are always so cute.
Thank you. Thank you. Let's jump. Because we'll be able to really feel our cardiovascular system if we make it go first.
Literally jump.
Literally jump. Just like you don't have to jumping jack or anything, but just get a little bounce going on. You really like activate those hips and the big muscles of the thighs. It doesn't take much to get the heart pumping a little bit, but I want you to have your heart going extra loud by the time that we close your eyes. Just get it. Right? Pogo. Yes. Okay. Excellent. All right, that's probably good. Can you feel it? It's working?
Yeah.
Heart's working? All right. It doesn't take much. The heart is so responsive and so full. Any additional action on it, it wants to click into gear and get us fully serviced, fully oxygenated. Fill it out for just a second. It's a nice spike of dopamine, even like 1 minute or less, like we just did. Get a nice little rush of circulation fluids. Okay. So go ahead and arrive into the body. Make yourself comfortable. Close your eyes. Just to slow down how much external information you have to process and receive. And turn the focus of the body into the inward information. Drop down into the feet. See if you can pick up that pulse just with your sensation in the feet. If you can't, that's okay. Just mark in your mind what you can do now, because it will change over time. And thread up through the body, keeping track of where you can really get information about your heartbeat. Through the legs, ankles, knees. Sweep through on that pattern a little bit. Let your mind drop back into the state that we've been building and creating. You've got yourself beginning to condition, just like we talked about, conditioned responses. The heart even can be trained to condition responses. The breath, the awareness. We can teach it all. So with your breath, sweep through the body. Cresting at the crown of the head and dropping back down through the fingertips. This is life. Awareness is love. Attention is care. Feeling is wisdom. And sit for a moment with the beat of your heart right in your chest. We've probably all learned some strategies to find the pulse on another person, find it on ourselves, in the wrist, maybe the temples. See if you can find it from the inside. follow it with your fingers. It's that wave of directed consciousness. We're training it to end in the hands. We're teaching the power to go to the hands. So hold your heartbeat. Hold your breath without holding it. Just embrace it. Movement is life. Consciousness is love. Awareness is care. Just be aware and care about what is in your blood. The resources, the power of cleansing, the messages, and the life. And return to your entire body. Return to the skin. Return to the air and the sounds. And join us back in the room. Okay. I used to have a red marker, but now I don't. Sorry. So we'll use pink. We'll make it through somehow. All right, what do we know about the circulatory system?
There's veins and arteries. Blood vessels.
Veins. God. I'm going to be extra dyslexic for a second and have to actually look up how to spell veins. V-E-I. Yep, I did it right and it didn't look right. And then I was like, wait. Veins. Arteries. Arteries. You said vessels.
Now,
Vessels.
circulatory is also known as the cardiovascular system, right?
Yes, circulatory, cardiovascular. Yes, so circulatory means the circuit that the blood is making. Cardiovascular means the heart and all the vessels. So it amounts to the same. Yes.
Okay, so it's not necessarily interchangeable, but it's referring to all the same stuff.
There may be cases where you would use them distinctively, but most of the time that you hear it, it's going to be the same lump sum that you're getting at. Yes.
Okay.
Great question.
And the blood, I believe, travels from the heart to wherever it's deposited. through
Blood.
organs.
Yes.
And it happens, it's delivered, something happens, and then veins take it back. But I don't know what the thing is.
All right,
I don't
cool.
know where it goes.
That's all right. We're going to get through that. You're like way ahead of us already.
You got some capillaries too, right?
Yes. All right, great. What are capillaries?
They're the little branches, right?
Uh-huh. Capillaries. Love.
And those can burst.
Yes, they can take damage.
And they can fill someone's whole eye up.
Is that what's happening here with my
Mhm.
little thin skin, and I get these little blood blister things when the
Yes.
doctor jumps on me?
Yes, exactly.
Those are capillaries.
Just
going crazy.
from impact, because they're very, very fine. We'll get through all that. Okay, so you guys have a pretty good foundational concept of that. And while we're here, let's just make a little note because we are going to circle back today into the respiratory system. Because these guys are so closely interlinked that we can hardly talk about one without the other. So what else do we have going on in respiratory system?
You got your lungs,
Mm-hmm.
and they move the air in and out of you.
Air.
So oxygen and CO2 is breathed out.
CO2.
Carbon dioxide.
Yep, or we're going to call that gas exchange.
Okay, so we're exchanging our gases.
Yep. Okay.
Your trachea or your windpipe
Yeah.
to be facing up, not down into the gut,
Yeah.
like we put it.
Yes.
And you got your bronchial tubes. Is that what they're called? Tubes?
Yeah.
The bronchius.
Bronchii.
Bronchii.
And then as they get littler and littler, we've got the bronchioli.
Oh,
Uh-huh.
those are the little tiny branches.
Yeah.
Are the cilia part of the, I guess they're in the throat, in the trachea?
There is some cilia assisting respiratory function. Good call. Most of the time we're going to see cilia in the digestive system is where we're really using a lot of cilia technology. But yes, we've got some going on in the respiration as well.
You got your nose, your nasal passages, your
Yeah.
sinuses.
Uh-huh. And what do these two systems have in common?
Well, they work hand in hand to cleanse the blood
Uh-huh.
and to distribute nutrients throughout the body.
Yep.
Right?
Very important. Yep. We have one sort of organ that is shared really directly.
The heart? An organ that shares the lungs, I guess, and the heart. One organ is shared.
One organ, is it the, oh my god, circulatory and respiratory systems, blood and breathing, and so, your mouth?
Mouth.
Would not have got that.
The mouth.
Wait, what?
Yeah, that we're intaking air and we're intaking blood. Whoa, sorry. I just switched from a whole different. No wonder that was extra confusing for you guys because I have taught digestive and respiratory at the same time other cases.
Oh, okay.
That was
So
silly.
the mouth is
Sorry.
not really part of the circulatory.
Not so. I mean, it is absolutely serviced by blood vasculature, but thank you for the challenge on that. You're like, wait, what? I know.
Is it true?
The mouth.
The mouth is connected to the circulatory.
Mouth shares respiration and digestion.
Okay. Yeah, that makes more sense.
Uh-huh. Yes. Yeah, I love making mistakes. It's so distinctive. It makes me feel my Miss Frizzle side come out. Take chances, make mistakes, get messy, but don't bleed from the mouth if you can avoid it.
It was a test. Let's see if we caught it.
Yeah, all right. We got it. Okay, you guys are so on track right now. I'm still waking up.
That was some 5D chess.
Excellent. Okay, so this is a great start. So let's just go in there now that we're on the magic school bus approach. Let's just drop in. I think I'm going to do circulation generally and then zoom back in on the heart a little more specifically. And I'm noticing that none of our books actually are going to make us work too hard about the specifics of the heart. So that's kind of nice for you guys. Okay. Okay. So let's just start with a heart. And I don't know if you guys have ever noticed, the heart is not actually shaped the way that we draw on Valentine's Day cards. Do you guys know why that shape?
Because it's a butt.
Cute.
It is.
Cute.
It's
Booty.
Like, it was a booty. It was like started in the 20s, and it was like either Betty Boop or just like a woman bending over, and so like the shape of a woman's behind started to become a heart in the 20s.
Which definitely gets it going.
That's what I heard.
Right?
I don't know if you actually had a different answer, but.
So there's another kind of weaving in and out. This goes all the way back to some Greek philosopher stuff. If you could conceive of two hearts side by side,
That's a lot nicer.
two people's hearts in the sensation of unity of the heart, then we get this like gif. But we'll go with this guy. We've got our one little solid heart beating. Okay, so what's gonna come off the heart?
Your aorta?
Yeah, so we've got to have a aorta, and it's actually going to go both directions. So we've got an abdominal aorta and the superior aorta. And so these are kind of our main threads, but right away it's going to start branching off because everything in us is branching off because that tree of life stuff is like you just can't get away from it, yeah? And so this is going to weave all the way through the system. Now we're down like in the leg, something. And so naturally the blood vessels, and these are going to be arteries, are getting finer and finer as they have less to carry as they descend. Exactly, it's dividing, and so it's kind of thinning out, yeah? I'm getting really crafty here. So eventually we're going to come down to actually a very narrow passage. And these are going to kind of divide off even and sort of make these like little webbing structures. And we've got arterioles as it divides there. And about halfway through this webbing structure, we're going to start calling it venules, because they're going to turn into veins right in there. So we've got this super important transition point. And these structures generally are going to be capillaries.
The whole bundle of them turning from one to the other.
Yep, as it's diffusing out and then rejoining and building back up strength into a vein. And this vein is going to be joined by more veins. They're going to feed back into a more and more central system and get fatter and fatter, and then eventually jump back into circulation at the heart. So I'm following the kind of convention here of drawing it with this like red or pink for arteries, blue for veins. But of course, the veins are not truly outright blue. We get a little bit of like a filtering through the skin, so we can see a tone of blueness, but of course, as soon as that gets exposed to the air, it's gonna oxygenate a bit more, and even if we could just scope straight into it, it's really more of a like purple, darker purple. This is because red blood cells, or erythrocytes, are the main carriers for oxygen in the body. And how it works is actually exactly like rust. Erythrocytes are really heavy in a material called hemoglobin, which is mostly iron. And iron can grab oxygen and oxygenate, basically. It'll hold it for the same reason that rust develops on the surface of metals when it's oxygenated in the air. Does that make sense? So rust is more red than, say, steel, right? And so that's why blood is red. That's the whole.
Wait.
Yep.
Wait. So iron can oxygenate hemoglobin, and iron has a red quality to it, or?
Yeah, when iron is attached molecularly to those strands of oxygen, then it's rust. It's the material of iron bonded with oxygen. And so it goes back and forth, like you can do chemical shifts on a piece of iron and take it back and forth from like more or less black, but kind of like silvery shiny, yeah, and turn it red with that process of rusting.
Oh yeah, sometimes rust does look like it's bleeding down when it's water.
Yeah. So once these hemoglobin molecules are loaded up and they're a component of the erythrocytes, which is a cell, then they're going to be as red as possible. They're going to leave from the heart fully oxygenated, and they're going to diffuse oxygen into the bloodstream the entire way. So what do we want to happen here in the capillaries?
In the capillaries, we want oxygen to be distributed out into the body. Yes?
Yes. We want the oxygen to completely diffuse as much as possible.
That's why not so red coming back.
Exactly. So we're dumping off all of that oxygen. And meanwhile, there's going to be gas exchange happening here. And we're going to pick up as much carbon dioxide as we can and shove that back into the venules. So why this works is because the walls of these vessels are super, super sheer. In some places, like 1 cell thick, right? And so they're pretty easy to damage. It's easy to get a little bit of backup blood, just like spilling out into that interstitial fluid. And the more erythrocytes are like getting lost from the closed system of the cardiovascular cycle, the more that you're going to see that diffused into the skin. But we want to get that CO2 loaded back into it, and then that's going to jump back up and stay in the flow. So why does it keep going around and around?
Because the heart is pumping.
Yes. The heart is really responsible for the actual circular action of the circulatory system. But the vessels are helping out, and all through the entire arterial system, there's actually really fine muscles kind of spiraled around all of these vessels. And so we have the capacity to dilate or contract the vessels. So contraction is when the muscles are tightening down, and so that's going to narrow the chamber that the blood has to get through. Or dilation being when the muscles go flaccid and loose, and so they're open, and the vessels become at the most relaxed open capacity. They can carry a lot. But these muscles are going to act rhythmically in synchronization with the heart. This is one of those places where when people have like a very vague sense of unwellness, the synchronization of all this vasculature to the beat of the heart is one of those things that like we can feel. It makes us feel really weird, and it can be subtle, kind of drain on your general sense of wellness, right? That you need it to stay in a certain amount of collaborative effort that makes sense, that really like uses the force of the heart's pumping action and gravity and the pressure from the walls of the vessels all synchronized together to most efficiently deliver oxygen through the entire system. So if this is weird, what is this?
Blood pressure.
Blood pressure problems. Yeah. So blood pressure, by, of course, we have to have blood pressure. If you have no blood pressure, you're dead. There's no circulation happening. But if you're having fluctuations of blood pressure that are inefficient, this is a coordination problem between the heart and the vasculature. This is something people often miss. They think that it's just an indicator of heart problems, but it's something that can happen from the muscles not being well serviced as well. So if you have electrolyte imbalance, calcium imbalance, iodine imbalance, all of those things that are fundamental to the action of the muscles being able to work effectively, that's going to affect the vasculature as well.
Are those muscles called something different from regular muscles, skeletal muscles?
Yeah, they're just the arterial
Muscle.
material. Yeah, and they're not like named distinctively the way that
Like different veins.
like your glute is a distinct muscle, because it's kind of like a continuous, it's just part of the fiber of the wall of the blood vessels.
And is that the only thing that encases veins to make them kind of like tubes? Or is there like tissue that kind of...
Yeah, so it's kind of similar to like connective tissue material. There's going to be a lot of collagen and just proteins of various kinds interwoven. Proteins are great, right? Because they're building blocks. They're the building blocks of life. That's why we talk about like you have to get the proteins started in order to have any kind of evolution, right? Proteins are novel molecular structures that kind of work like Legos on a molecule level. And so that's what cells mainly are doing, right? Once a cell gets started, its main job is like generate the appropriate kind of protein to maintain whatever system it's assigned to. Yeah. So once we've got this transition here, we've used the force of gravity, we've used the power of the heart, and we've used this vascular control to drive the blood and the supply of oxygen all the way down into the arterioles and jump into those capillaries. Then it's going to cross over. It's going to be hopefully pretty fully deoxygenated if everything is going well, and it's going to return. On this side, you're not going to have the same kind of muscle force, and what you've got in terms of just the shape, we've got a little bit of a fundamental struggle. Gravity is helping the blood on the way down. Mm-hmm. On the way back up, gravity is really working against the flow of blood. And so blood pressure is again going to be really key, because if you're struggling to clear the force of gravity to get the blood continuing to supply the heart and sent back through the system, then you're going to get like dizziness, faintness. You're going to have low oxygen supply to the brain and to every other part of the body. So this gets awkward really fast.
So those muscles are basically the key to having healthy blood pressure, because they're able to contract and push up?
It's kind of the collaboration, but the veins are not muscular that way.
The veins are not muscular.
What the veins have is like little gates. So they're going to really try to prevent flow back, so that once the whatever little unit of blood we're following has cleared a certain place in the veins, then there's going to be barriers to stop it dropping
Like
back down. Exactly, a valve. And so it's going to get pushed up and up with this kind of residue pressure there's still definitely a lot of pressure. I mean, like, you don't want to take your pulse from a vein, but like you can absolutely sense, there's lots of instruments, lots of people can sense the amount of flow that's still going through veins, but it's not going to have quite this same like whoomp, 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 the like arterial system that's powered by the force of the heart. The veins are going to start having that like softer like
Curious. The heart pumps, so it contracts and pushes, and when it relaxes, does it kind of suck a little bit to get the vein to feed it?
Somewhat, yeah. Sucking would be a little strong, but of course, once it's forced blood out of it and then it relaxes, then the vacuum that's created is going to have an amount of draw.
So it's more of a draw than a suck.
Yeah.
And it's now the capillary effect is happening only in the capillaries, or all the tubing that's in the heart is also doing the capillary effect.
Well, ideally, yeah, you're only losing nutrients and oxygen and doing this exchange in capillaries, but the capillaries are everywhere. That like all through the whole, your skin, your muscles, everything is like interwoven with different places where the blood system is hitting these terminal points and having some diffusion and supplying. So obviously the cells that are right up against here are very dependent on the exchange of waste material and gases and new reception of oxygen to keep functioning. So we can't have cells that are very far from a capillary. Like, we just wouldn't be able to take care of them. Right.
When the blood supply is cut off, that's pretty much it for that limb or that.
Yeah. Like, the cells have a impressive amount of reserves stored in them, and some cells are a lot more efficient at like shutting down and slowing their process, and so they may be able to go for a while. But really, why like large portions of tissue die and like just stop being serviced by the body is when it's not able to access this exchange, because this is life. Like, breath is life.
Yeah.
Right. So the blood is really the carrier of everything. So we've got this whole complex set of, exactly like you said, Karen, one-way valves that feeds up, and these are going to be really heavy through the low leg, and so you'll see quite a bit. We probably all have a little bit ourselves, and eventually, yeah, and when we get those spider veins, right?
Over here on this side.
Mm-hmm.
If you ignore the stain from my deck job, but you can see here the bulgy blue branches that, because I have the heaviness and all that stuff.
So that is an indicator of where just the effort of preventing backflow has broken down the capacity to some extent. Sometimes they'll outright like pop and allow backflow for a certain area, and that's not the end of the world, because there's still valves above and below. There's a lot of valves, but that when you have a little bit of failed valves in a certain area, that's where you're going to start to get that spider veins situation. This is wrong. Venules. Sorry.
I have kind of a weird question about
Yes.
the connection between the cardiovascular system and the nervous system. When the heart starts pumping faster in response to stress, is there a physical link, or is that just your nerves are like, is it just the nerves?
This is a great question that really taps into something profound. The brain does talk to the heart, and the heart talks to the brain. They have a fair amount of chatter. The heart is actually sending up to 10 times more information to the brain than it's receiving.
How'd that work? What the heck?
Right. So, you know, we get told that, like, it's kind of silly, it's superstitious to be like, follow your heart or whatever. Like, that when you're a little kid, it makes sense. Like, yeah, my heart and my feelings. And, like, it just feels right. And then eventually somebody explains, like, no, you think with your brain. Your brain tells you what to do. Your heart just pumps the blood. Nope.
Words are fake.
Words are fake.
In Chinese medicine, I think the brain is really not much importance in the Chinese medicine, right? It's like we don't even know.
There's not a lot you can do about the brain
And they think
directly.
I think they said something like the liver is where we get all of our information or something.
Sure, there's all kinds of information, and it's actually, like, as we kind of, like, allow ourselves to straddle these, like, ancient Eastern traditions, and we're, like, super blessed with having direct access to these Polynesian traditions here, and then we're also coming in having to, like, float these, like, Western conceptions. But on the whole, we have to always keep in mind, like, the Western understanding of medical science and all of this is super, super reductionist. That, like, their whole goal is to narrow down and, like, come up with the most simplistic understanding of the material artifacts of what's going on that is possible. And, you know, we need that too. Like, we need the intersection to, like, really level up, because if your whole idea of what's going on is like, well, my, you know, grandfather did this and his grandfather did this and whatever, like, we can accidentally transmit errors or just, like, stuff that's not the most efficient way of dealing with something. So Western medicine gives us something, but traditional medicines, Eastern medicines, give us something else. And so this is where, in our profession, we get this really beautiful intersection place where we don't really have to, like, swear allegiance. We don't. We can swear allegiance to the body on the table and show up with everything that we know from both sides, as long as we stay inside of our scope of practice of, like, what we actually individually are trained to accomplish, and stay inside of that. And the client has the choice, right? And so if you are a practitioner of, I mean, just go really easy, LomiLomi, right? Somebody who doesn't like the worldview of LomiLomi is just not going to get on your table. And so you can allow them to filter themselves out by who shows up at your door is the right person to receive your medicine. And to zoom out on this stuff really quick, because this is super.
Show up once and then they're going to decide they don't like it.
Right, which is,
traumatized.
well, I mean, that's allowed, and that's part of, like, the in work that we do of, like, just accepting that, like, no one provider is medicine for every consumer, and letting them sort themselves out is actually quite sacred. And once we, like, zoom out from that whole, like, the ego conflict of, like, does my thing work? Like, my thing's gonna work on the people who are ready to receive my thing. And so let's go back out to, you guys all have some exposure to the idea of, like, placebo, right? So, placebo. The first time that this was explained to me as a concept, this guy was like, well, it's just in your head. And I'm like, okay, so, and, you know, they, like, eventually I took many classes, and all, like, people on the Western angle will every time hit from this very solid perspective of, well, if you can explain what happened in the body by the mental impact of them thinking that something good was going to happen in the body, then that invalidates your medicine. And I'm like, okay, but what's the backhand of that? And this is really getting explored right now, and all over the world, like, practitioners and researchers are like, there's this huge convergence coming where suddenly we caught our glitch of, if the mind can do most of the work of most medicine, which is statistically true. like we're
You need the
missing
medicine
the
for it.
point
Yeah.
if we're trying to be stuck on the medicine itself, right? And so, like, for us especially, like, we're not going to be the primary person treating like catastrophic bleeding or this stuff that like really is so efficiently dealt with in the Western system. We're going to let them get in an ambulance and go to the hospital, and so like we can divest ourselves of over involved responsibility for those types of outcomes, which allows us to narrow in on our own scope of practice, which is the collaboration of the person choosing our medicine, like our like spirit medicine, I'm saying, you know, like, and their acceptance of that, because their belief in the possibility of improvement under your hands is going to do most of the work. It doesn't matter if you know what you're doing, you're going to get benefits. Like, I strongly recommend that people who want to do this all the time get the full training so that they can bring the entire tool set and really keep themselves and their clients safe from the like weird little mistakes that we all make if we're totally unsupervised and guessing, right? But like, your 5-year-old cousin can give you a foot massage and make your nervous system go into reflexes and make your cardio system adjust. Like, anybody can get the activation going that's mostly happening when the mind engages in relaxation. When the mind starts accepting that improvements are happening, and like whether or not you can believe like my large scale diagnosis that's driving my life is going to actually be cured by this massage, probably not. But can your client believe that they will feel better after an hour of direct attention and care?
It's so similar to what I feel like we've been experiencing when we've been moving to the hips with LomiLomi, and
Yeah.
I catch myself on the table sometimes like forgetting to relax and anticipating, oh, they're gonna
Right.
come because they're trying to find a
Right.
location. And so the goals
And then you're
the
bracing.
intention, I start to tense.
Mhm.
The intention behind it completely changes based on what you allow yourself to feel and think. And then like the days where I go home more exhausted, more fatigued, are the ones
Right.
where I'm only thinking about they're trying to find a specific bone or structure or whatever.
Mhm.
I feel a lot better when I'm just like,
Absolutely.
I can just lie on the table. Like,
Yeah.
Feel
Yeah.
healed, feel relaxed, feel whatever I set. as the
Exactly.
intention.
Exactly. And profoundly, if somebody has quite a lot of practice with meditative body scanning, that person can get on the table by themselves and generate a fair amount of what a experienced practitioner would be able to bring to their body. That the sequencing of the awareness, like the hypnotic experience of being guided through your own body, is a huge part. Just the reminder of like, you have this part of you and it's connected to this part of you, and they're connected and they're connected and they're connected, and the mental state that's the result of following information inside the body and allowing yourself to shift out of the sympathetic activation of focal points outside of you and drop into open parasympathetic awareness inside the body is going to do a lot of the work. So there are a lot of people who would say, like, we shouldn't call ourselves healers because, like, it sounds kind of weird to, like, Western ears, right? Of, like, that sounds like just juju witch stuff, and, like, I'm not comfortable with that or whatever. And I get that. I think, like, what I would say to that is, like, we're not the healers of the person on the table. We're the healers of ourselves that are there holding the capacity to believe in the process of healing and setting that example and refracting that back and forth with the client that allows them to achieve the mental state and the sequenced awareness of the body that's going to do most of our work. Does that make sense?
Yes, and since the heart communicates more with the brain, it really is about intention and energy that you carry more.
Right.
Well, not that communication isn't key and important, and word choice is meaningless.
Right.
But it's also like what they're going to feel is going to communicate more to their cognitive function more than the other way, if that makes sense.
Right. Well, and what they're going to feel is going to have a huge impact on their non-cognitive function. Because our cognitive function, our prefrontal cortex stuff, this is all like our newest devices in evolution. This is our brand new technology that we're like, hey guys, we're primates. I have a great idea. Let's be bipedal, walk upright, have way bigger heads, and jam more brains in there so we can talk to each other.
Let's get some typewriters.
Right? Eventually something will come out. So like it's interesting moves, but the part of the brain that is older than that we share with all the rest of our primate relatives and like the whole mammal family, all of this, like we're running our bodies with a part of the mind that is so ancient. And a lot of the time, real healing happens when you get the prefrontal cortex out of the way and let the body do what it always knew how to do. Yeah.
So as healers, we're really just holding space for an individual's healing process.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's why we're trying to be whole and healthy
Exactly.
ourselves, so that we don't absorb anything negative
Mm-hmm.
from a sick person or an unwell person.
Right.
And we're emanating health and good, and well-being.
Right.
to that
Right.
person.
And like we don't have to be perfect either. Like we don't have to be at the pinnacle of health in order to bestow the experience of health on other people. We have to be healing inside ourselves. That the action that we are doing of continually believing in our progressive ability to correct the damage that we're taking from the outside world and grow in strength and grow in wisdom, basically, in like experiential responses that are more effective and efficient, like that our progression in that and our activity inside of our progression is what they're really gonna be able to cycle on with us. And sometimes people will be like, like really feel like they've hit the level of health that they don't have to worry about sickness or whatever, but that doesn't necessarily give them something to give someone else. That it's like the dedication and the belief that's in your energy, that's all the way down into your cells. Like your cells can hear you talking to yourself. Yeah. And so this is where the power really comes from. But yes, the brain and the heart are having this super high level communication, and it's very much routed through the nervous system. The heart knows when the brain goes sympathetic. The brain knows when the heart goes sympathetic. Either one of them can start a spiral. Yeah.
So does the heart have those same two functions of sympathetic and parasympathetic?
It is innervated both sympathetically and parasympathetically, and the rest of the sympathetic system is going to hear the heart. So the heart can literally lead the way in the nervous system and tell the nervous system so much information so fast that the cognitive elements of the brain are like just not relevant. Like the central nervous system is just like, yeah, the brain is talking, but I'm sorry. Like the heart is on the front line right now.
Yeah, wow. Ooh, interesting. I bet we're going to evolve and the heart is going to get some kind of cognitive function next.
We have no real justification for believing that it doesn't.
Right.
Woo!
There's no proof that it doesn't. We always say it, I know in my heart.
Yes.
I know in my heart this,
Right.
and it's something that's a really core belief.
Yes.
You know in your heart.
And a conflict is so distressing, right? That when you have that sensation of heart belief and heart knowledge, but technically the evidence in front of you is pointing a different direction, like the brain can't just be like, well, the evidence says this, so I'll just totally change beliefs. Like that's why it doesn't work to argue with people, right? Like you can't really just convince, like it just doesn't work to argue with people. If you can't get in onto the heart level,
right,
then they cannot change their mind, because the possibility that there's something hiding behind, that there's some data that's missing, like the brain will give so many like pinging justifications and like scattered bees every direction, right? But the heart actually is capable of a bit more concise self-awareness that lets go of that like outer noise, because it can't hear the same way that the brain can, so it can like be almost more secure. Yeah.
I still like arguing.
Yeah, I mean, that's
Well, what do
I'm
you
not
like
gonna
better?
stop.
What do you like better, a tete-a-tete or a heart-to-heart?
I love this.
I like looking someone deep in the eyes and telling them they drink or you're stupid.
Well, that might just be more of like a cortisol addiction. Just sometimes we can, like, you know, we can rev up a little bit. Sometimes you need more sympathetic activity, and stirring shit with somebody feels a little better.
Oh,
Right?
sorry, like everything makes sense now.
Okay.
Sometimes for non-native English speaker, I'm confusing. I know it in my heart or I know it in my mind. But anyway, it's interesting topics to know that.
Yes.
Is that a phrase in Japanese? Like, do they make a distinction?
In Japanese, they don't have so much words to divide the mind or heart. So when I use English, I'm always wondering. So how do I say in my heart or in my mind? It depends on my imagination.
Because there's no
Mhm.
Wizard of Oz, like where they make a distinction, like the Cowardly Lion, the Tin Man without a heart,
Right.
and the Scarecrow without a brain. Like, it really is culturally divided up into these. Not that I wouldn't necessarily lump cowardice into that realm like they do in movies, but
Well, let's just, for just a second, because we're here and I'm easily distracted.
if you insist.
Coward. Courage.
Cardiovascular. Oh.
Yes. Cardio.
What? Are you serious?
Yes.
I was kidding. Coward, courage.
Yeah. Our English courage comes via French cour,
That was like a
the
magic
heart.
trick. That was amazing. Coward, please.
Way to bring it back.
Full circle, circulatory.
Full circulatory.
Wow.
Yeah. So this is like our sense of anxiety or our sense of security is in fact going to be a bit more determined on the heart level than in the brain. And that's not even woo-woo. Like there's no, like I'm making no juju claims there. You can watch that in an MRI.
Wow.
Wait, so you can see cowardice in an MRI? Is that what I'm getting?
I don't actually need an MRI.
I should just look in the mirror. What was the last thing you said? It was all coming together for me, and then I and whatever.
What is the last thing I said? What is the question?
I don't know. I felt like we built
Okay.
some cardio, and then I forgot where it was going. I'll watch the video. It's fine.
Yeah.
All right. Sounds good. If you guys are interested in some of a little bit more in depth, there is a really fabulous, fast talking crazy man that I love so much on YouTube, who narrates these like really exquisite animations that give you a lot more like zoom in on some of the specifics of what's going on. And I believe the cardio system one, he'll really like get you inside the heart and kind of sweeping through the ventricles and all this stuff so that you can kind of get a sense of like why the heart functions so efficiently as a pump. And that is Crash Course. And there's a anatomy, physiology. And now I wish I had my tablet to just put on the heart, because I do kind of want you to get exposed to that, but it's just really not showing up in the book at all. Like it apparently doesn't mind if you don't really know why the heart is a pump. So, yeah. Well, to revisit a couple terms really quick, we have, I said constrict and dilate about the vessels, but also just catch if you hear the terms vasoconstrict. Vaso is vessel. Vasoconstrict, vasodilation. That'll help you distinguish from, like, hypothetically, you could have, like, dilation of the irises, of the eyes, etc. So those terms will get you directly into the cardiovascular application.
Is there a term for, those are for arteries, for veins and the valve opening and closing? Is there a different term?
The veins, the valves opening and closing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be part of, vasoconstriction, vasodilation as well.
Is it dilation or
Dilation.
Dilation.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Just to sweep in a few terms. We talked a little bit about blood pressure. You'll need to know the terms hypertension, being tension of the blood pressure that is above our ideal, and hypotension below the ideal. Okay? And then let's just take a couple quick minutes to talk a little bit about what is actually in the blood. Okay. So most of the juice of blood is plasma. So this is a clear, sometimes somewhat yellowish fluid. It is very, very similar to the interstitial fluid in that it basically just needs to be water that has enough electrolytes to conduct electricity. Electrolytes. Okay? So these are the salts. You need balanced salts: magnesium, iodine, sodium, calcium. So plasma needs to have kind of a balanced element of those things in order to be efficient. And it also is going to have those erythrocytes. This word cyte is cells. So every time you see cytes, C-Y-T-E-S, that's cells. Erythro, this is red. So our red blood cells. And so those are going to do the heavy lifting on the gas exchange process. There's also going to be a lot of just various micronutrients, vitamins and minerals, yeah? And macronutrients. Where are these guys coming from?
Kidneys?
Digestive system. Yeah, we eat these. And when we get into the digestive system, we'll zoom in on the intestines to see how micro and macronutrients are kind of yanked out of the food that we have taken in and diffused into the bloodstream for access to our cells. And then we're also going to have a lot of leukocytes. These are also made in the bone marrow, just like the erythrocytes. Leukocytes are the white blood cells. And there's lots of different kinds. There's actually, erythrocytes are pretty similar. They're going to be like, kind of varying in size-ish, but they're they just have one function. They just do the same thing. So they just are more or less the same. Leukocytes have a huge amount of variation and variety, and we'll dive deeper into that when we get into the immune system, because basically leukocytes are the active frontline function
Fighting
of the
infections
immune
and things
system.
like that.
These are the ones that are free floating in the body that can go somewhere and do something about it. So when we get to the immune system, we'll really break that down, but that's good to know that those are in the bloodstream. You may recognize this bit, leukocytes, as leukemia. Leukemia is cancer of the white blood cells. And so that, I'm sure you can imagine, is part of why that can be such a variable, but in some cases really devastating condition when the active cancer is able to ride through the entire body on the components that are supposed to be fighting on your behalf. Yeah. So remember that leukocytes term. And just a heads up, you'll see phleb. Phleb, why did I make it R? Phleb as a prefix. Phlebotomy is the study of blood, etc. So anytime that you see phleb, this is like blood specific terminology. You guys doing good?
Yeah.
Cool. All right, let's take a little
Short break.
break and we'll circle back up and jump a little harder onto the respiratory system. Thanks, everybody.
Oh, guys, look. You brought something? Your big camera.
Actual camera. You might not use it today, but I remember it.
Come on, where's